Get started.
Yeah, let's go and get started, I think. So, Helen, I'm going to kick it over to you to welcome everybody.
Sounds good. Good morning, folks. And as has already been mentioned, Happy New Year. Hope you're doing well. And I know the response to even that prompt from some people is like, is it a Happy New Year? So I do want to acknowledge kind of the mixed feelings a lot of people are having about 2026. And I'm appreciative to Brittany and the team. I think we're going to make some time for a check-in in a moment on some just how you're doing as we start this year. But I'll say I'm glad to have you all by my side. So appreciate your time on this Monday morning as we get started. The remarks I'll make just to start the day is getting a lot of, I think, appropriate questions about change, right? Like what's happening with the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative. It's been called a 5-year initiative, right, with specific funding, and we are turning the corner now into year 5 of that. And I think that the top line to me is that was poor marketing. I don't want you to think of it as a 5-year initiative. The wellness coaches not going away. Fee schedule, it's in statute. It's permanent. Dietic services, permanent. Saluna and Bright Life Kids, as examples, like those are funded through this upcoming fiscal year as well, at minimum, with a plan really to sustain them. All 3 campaigns, like Take Space to Pause, Never a Bother, Live Beyond, all of those have been included in some of the draft plans for the Behavioral Health Services Act. And so there's a lot of work that is really ongoing. And if you have any questions about any of that, always just feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to this team and happy to talk through any pieces. But I'll acknowledge in this particular space with transforming together, we still have some things to figure out. And there's still a lot of work that's happening to have some of those conversations. But the cross-cutting nature of this work to me like really makes me optimistic. And I will add that the playbook that you're all writing, I think it helps point us all in directions that we should think about, right? So if you're working on shared leadership and that's the focus of your efforts in county or in any jurisdiction, connect, right, to the existing structures of the integrated leadership team, sorry, interagency leadership team or the executive action committees and all these spaces. If you're working on shared information sharing, right, we've got integrated plans that are happening and also alignment between behavioral health and public health work. So the guide that you're writing again is pointing people to these structures and places, and I think that's really important here. And expect to hear more, as this year goes on about, how we continue to sustain the work in a more concrete sense. And with that, I'll just go to the next slide. I want to close with this, which is a something I learned about in a training I went through pretty recently. And I just thought it was a little bit enlightening for me. And it describes the work of change. It can happen in any change process, but I think it's particularly emblematic here. So to orient you a little bit, the y-axis is consciousness. Are you unconscious about something or are you conscious about something? And the x-axis is competence. Are you doing something well or not at this point in it? And so, with anything, we start in that top left place of unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. And then you work your way down, right, to the bottom left here, in which the eyes are starting to open. Still not working well, but you're conscious about that. Like you recognize, oh, there is these other interagency leadership structures, or oh, I can engage better with children, youth, and families, or oh, we can think more creatively about our workforce, all to better serve this child. And you can see the emotions that are often attached to that. But slowly, with some time, we get to that bottom right, which is that it takes work. We're conscious about it, like we're thinking about it all the time, but we're getting there. And then ultimately, right, the goal is to just make it second nature. Like this is just the new way of working through things. And so as we turn the corner into 2026, you're going to hear more about webinars, about bringing more and more people into this. I want you to recognize it's a process for everybody. And you can't do what those like solid blue thin arrows are showing. Like you can't just jump from one place to the other. You have to work through this mentally, emotionally. And the other piece that was part of the training is that yellow arrow is the bias of those who know things, right? Who just then assume, and sometimes the danger is being pejorative about it, of just like, why doesn't everyone else do it this way? Why doesn't everyone else understand it? So I hope we can just continue to bring the grace of this process of knowledge as you bring more and more partners into the work, because I think that's ultimately the ask I have. Is this is really supposed to be cross-sector work, breaking down silos and bringing people together to serve our children and youth better. So I thought it was interesting to me. Hopefully, it shed some light to you about the process. And with that, I will pass it back to our fantastic team. Thanks.
Thanks, Sohail. Really appreciate those reflections on change management. So, welcome everybody. It's great to see you all. This is our fourth CLWG meeting of this third year. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, we just ask that you sign in. Karen has dropped in a link. Please sign into the meeting so we know who is here today. I'm going to start with a couple of quick reminders. First of all, we're so excited that we have launched the Transforming Together landing page. So you'll see the link on the slide. It's now up and operational and includes the first two chapters of the implementation guide. So we encourage you to visit and send the site to others so that they can see more information about the work of T2 and how to build an ecosystem. In addition, we have designed a postcard that you can use to spread the word about T2 and the ecosystem building work. So please reach out to the San Bernardino team to get a copy of this that you can print for any conferences or meetings or other relevant gatherings you may be attending or hosting. So for today, I want to just quickly review our objectives and meeting agenda. We are spending our call today really digging into the content of Chapter 3, which is the Universal Array of Services and Workforce Expansion, necessary for an integrated children's ecosystem of care. It's a long title, but Universal Array of Services. So we're going to focus on that, and then we'll be actually spending some time on that. And just a reminder that some of this content may be new or may actually be maybe beyond where your county is in its development of an ecosystem of care. But what we really want to do for you all in this third year is provide you a roadmap to where you're going so that you can see the progression of steps and the work that you're going to need to do to build that ecosystem. So we're going to actually spend time going deeper into a few of the concepts discussed in Chapter 3. And you're going to have time in breakout sessions with CLWG members who've been working to operationalize these ideas of universal array and cross-agency pathways and readiness factors. We're then going to turn to Chapter 4, which is around really how do you sustain this work? And so we're going to give you an opportunity to give feedback on Chapter 4. Hopefully you all received it and had a chance to read through it. And we'll actually spend more time in our February and March meetings going deeper into the concepts. So really quickly, just want to remind you where we are in the arc of learning for year 3, and just so you can see sort of where we're headed for the rest of the year as we wrap up in June. So you'll see we're sort of in the middle right now designing the core. So that's why we're spending a lot of time on chapters 3 and 4. And then by April, May, and June, we're going to sort of look ahead to creating a roadmap. And I think what you're going to see in April, and we're really excited about this, is we've started planning for our in-person session, which is going to be a 2-day gathering in April in San Bernardino. And we've been in conversations with Youth Experiential Learning Labs program to see how we might work with them to design a customized simulation for our group. And so we'll send out more information about this, but we want you all to start thinking about inviting some of your cross-agency partners to join us for at least one of the days in April to participate in this cross-sector simulation with youth that we think will be a really great way to powerfully bring home the work we're doing in this initiative. So again, we'll send out more information on this before our next meeting, but we'd really encourage you to start thinking about who you want to bring with you in April. And we'll actually be providing a link to a registration form at the end of this call. All right. So we want to do a quick connector before we get into the meat of the call, and just want to acknowledge, as Sohail mentioned, it's been a really difficult start to the 2026, and so we just want to take some time to be mindful and just pause and reflect and check in with each other. And so we're going to send you into breakout groups of 3 to 4 folks for about 10 minutes, and just ask you to think about how you're feeling and what you're bringing into the space this week as we start on Monday. So Jameen's going to send you into small breakouts, and we just have some prompts, and you can actually use this feelings wheel. How am I feeling today? How can I take care of myself today? And how can I show up for my loved ones, my coworkers, and others today? And yeah, just want to give you space to reflect on, how you're feeling, whatever that may be. It could be joy, it could be peace, it could be stress, whatever it is. All of those are valid feelings. So we're going to go off into groups of 3 to 4, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Jimmy?
That was an incredibly smooth breakout experience. Congratulations. Everybody went. And nobody got stuck.
I
Yeah.
think folks are coming back. Hope you had some space to reflect on how you're feeling. I am going to actually turn it over to Marisa from the San Bernardino team to provide a brief update on the progress that the demo counties are meeting. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Marisa.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marissa Smith. I am with the San Bernardino Superintendent of Schools, County Office of Education, and we're super happy to be here with you this morning and to be an amazing part of this work. I know that you are accustomed to our fearless leader, Mr. James Soward. He is not with us this morning, regretfully, but I'm here to represent him and the team. The ladies, Karen, Alex, and Mara, have been with this project from the inception, and they've done an amazing set of work with you as the county offices. And so we have been honored to work with Stefan Breaking Barriers over the last couple weeks as we really worked to meet with each county. We're going to be meeting with each county on a monthly basis. And the reason for that, next slide, please. The reason for that is we're really looking at how we're able to check in with each of our counties and kind of check with our progress, review some of the amazing work that you're doing, some of the highlights, and kind of identify what are those next steps. And so the goal is that we're able to really share out a lot of that information with the counties that are part of this particular grant. We're hoping that we're able to relish in each other's successes and accomplishments, and then look at each other's challenges as stepping stones for each other. And maybe your challenge is something that somebody has figured out kind of the roadmap to, and so we're able to help facilitate each other in this work. And so Stefan, I'm going to dub him as our chief interviewer. He has really led the charge with the interview process and the questions. And so from these interviews, the first round of interviews that we have conducted, there are about 8 major themes that we're going to identify today that have kind of come out of these discussions. 3 of those major themes really building on the importance of building trusting relationships across our agencies, really having the importance of that mutual facilitation, having someone who's not in a leadership space in any of the specific agencies. And so that's something that kind of came out of our discussion. And then just really that importance of peer learning and learning from each other. And so as we look at our ecosystem of care and individuals in our counties that benefit from the services of not just one agency, but multiple agencies, our goal is that our agencies are able to come together and really create that top-notch system of care that we want for our families and specifically for our students. And so I'm going to pass it over to Stefan at this time, and we're going to kind of go through some of the themes that were collected from this first round of interviews, along with some of the questions and challenges that were presented. Stefan?
Yeah, thank you for the generous introduction, Marisa. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I was able to fortunately meet with some of the Pilot County's County Office of Education representatives. It was great talking to you all. To sort of amplify Sohail's point earlier, there's a lot of opportunity for us to elevate consciousness around this work, and really an incredible way to be able to do that, and an essential way to do that is to make sure that we are hearing from the field and checking our assumptions. And so part of the elevation of consciousness, beyond sort of sharing and socializing out what we're hearing from you, is as T squared, sort of as a group, as a leadership group, as sort of stewards of this work, so to speak, we need to make sure that we are checking our assumptions and elevating our consciousness of what's going on, what's needed, and how things are going. And so, talking with you and talking to the field is such a critical way of doing that. And so, born out of these conversations, we discovered some themes that were shared across all the conversations that we were able to have with some of you folks. So, what did we find out and what did we learn? We learned some things that we already know, and some things that we've talked about, but it's critical to be able to just make sure that we are hearing it. And one of them is that this work is essential and that ecosystem building is fundamentally quote unquote integration work and not really a set of programs. I think sometimes we can get caught up in the virtue signaling of ecosystem building. Sometimes, you know, we all know that what we don't want to do is replicate a system that has new branding and that has new names, but experientially to the field and to our users and to our populations that we're serving, it's the same set of experiences. So this work of ecosystem building is critical. It allows for the integration work to actually manifest in the way that we need. And in order to be able to do that, we have found and heard from you all that relationships and trust are really quite essential in making sure that that happens. So when our partners are able to take the time to invest in that shared vision and mission building, when we're able to share space together, when we're showing up consistently, and when we're building those relational habits, the relational accountability elevates as well. And so something that we thematically heard across these conversations is that we can create a new MOU and we can change the language within it. We can build a new structure. We can reduce redundancies across meetings. But if we're not working together, if we're not cohering around a same shared set of habits and norms, the work really is slower than we can if we're able to really deepen and invest in our relationships. The other thing that stood out consistently in our conversations is the emphasis on individualized coaching and the consultancies that we've been able to support through the brilliant unicorns of Mike, Richard, and Elizabeth. We heard across the board that neutral facilitation and that coaching through these consultancies, really getting in there, really helps move the needle around this work. So repeatedly, I think that one of the big takeaways that we've really been able to ground in is that just in terms of the maturation and where you all are as counties, is that individualized coaching as a service delivery, as a critical input to moving the needle, is something that we need to just continue to invest in, just knowing where the readiness is. And I'll speak to a little bit more around how do we sustain that, knowing that there are only so many Mikes, Richards, and Elizabeths of the world. Next slide, please. So another theme includes that breaking silos inside and across agencies is really important and something that counties are actively trying to do together and internally. We heard from a couple counties that beyond the across agency investments that are being made to break silos, that there are some inter-county agency shifts that need to be made as well. So we heard from Alameda County and the importance that, or the benefit that they are experiencing in doing some deep inter or inner agency collaborative work together. And so beyond just the across agency work, it's going inward as well as something that we're hearing from the counties. Another thing that we've heard is that consistently a non-negotiable is making sure that centering youth and community voice is not an option, but a design requirement. So we're really grateful to be able to hear that and just being mindful of time. Another theme that we heard is that peer learning is one of the strongest accelerators of ecosystem maturity. Something that we heard quite a bit was that counties want to be able to learn from one another. They want to be able to do some benchmark analysis. They want to be able to go visit one another and hear what are some of the strengths, what are some of the lessons learned. So it's on us to think about how we can facilitate that. It's on us, it's collectively to think about how we can cross coordinate with one another. So a great theme and a great bit of information that we learned as well. Next slide, please. So we also heard folks acknowledging that there is this horizon that's fast approaching us, and that horizon is the potential, the end of at least this phase of the T squared initiative. And so folks are starting to begin considering what happens after T squared ends, and expressing some uncertainty about what is the state's long-term investment in integrated systems work, and raising the importance of using T squared to build these structures that are scalable and sustainable across time. So that was acknowledged as well from a few counties. And lastly, that there is this point of affirmation that the T squared work is useful when it creates this shared language, when peer learning is able to happen, and when those blueprints are made to make the work doable. So that was really helpful. Sometimes I think we have questions around, is T squared, what kind of impact, collective impact is T squared having on the field? And so it was helpful to note that this work in the form of the implementation guide and the work of these CLWG meetings. Obviously, we have some webinars coming up over the next few months, so it was helpful to know that T squared is useful and serves as a proof of concept in the time to come to think about what happens next. So questions and challenges emerged as well, some of which I already noted. Next slide, please. So we know that the Michael Lombards and the Richard Connects and the Elizabeth Estates of the world are often seen as unicorns. There are only so many folks that are out there in the field serving in these consultancy capacities. So a question that has come up is, we need to have more sustainable models. We want to deepen and invest in the consultancy model. And what are we thinking about? How can we think strategically moving forward in the years to come to allow for us to, as counties and the state, invest in models and structures and the next wave, the next generation of system integration, system building facilitators and stewards? How can we think expansively and dynamically and non-singularly around what are different models that can allow for these for our county interagency and ecosystem building work to happen and not be so dependable on one or two people out there in the field? So that was raised as well. Who needs to be at the table, and how do we keep the table workable? Counties expressed the different trade-offs, the missing voices versus the large group. There's these trade-offs of having a huge table and then making sure that there's cross-representation. And when the table gets bid, what kind of impact that has as well? And another question that came up was, how do we translate shared vision into concrete, actionable next steps? This was raised again in the role that our consultancies and our individual coaches really help move the needle on. We want to make sure that we can sort of move that sort of tangible vision setting, mission building work into really concrete, actionable next steps, which we know Elizabeth, Mike, and Richard do a great job of. But really continuing to think about what can we do to make the vision into the concrete. Next slide, please. I raised this before and alluded to this earlier, but a big question that did come up is, what is the state's long-term commitment to integrated ecosystem work beyond T squared? We have seen and noted, and I think it's worth emphasizing, that the counties and the pilot counties themselves are are committed to this work. And we know that across the state, there are other counties who have really bought into doing this and finding solutions and finding resources that allow for this work to continue without depending on T squared. And I think a question has been raised around what is the state's stance? What's the state's vision for how this work can happen from the macro standpoint? And I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone, but time and meeting saturation are a structural barrier. Agencies are really, really working hard within their own lane of work to move the needle within their own set of goals. We know that some of this work is about shared goals, about sort of shared resources, which we'll talk more about today. But time is limited, and how are we able to really continue thinking about what we can do to make our time more efficient in the midst of when folks are already experiencing and struggling to find time already? So that continues to be a challenge that is being illuminated and amplified. Another question is, how can ecosystem work remain resilient through leadership transitions? Individuals and leaders are institutions in themselves. They are systems, they are structures. And so when one leader change, oftentimes it can really disrupt and slow down the work. And so a question that was surfaced by several folks astutely and wisely is, how can we not be so dependent on leaders and individuals to keep the work moving forward? And so that is a long-term goal I think that we've heard throughout, is we want to not be so dependent on individuals to keep the work going. And so how can we sustain the work without that dependency? Next slide, please. Policy to practice alignment remains underdeveloped. That a need for coaching and TA on the state policymaking and how to connect policy decisions to boots on the ground so that policy becomes operational reality. Another question is, how do counties define and measure shared outcomes in ways that are usable? We are going to be socializing through the implementation guide a variety of different resources that hopefully will be able to facilitate some grounding in shared outputs and outcomes and dashboards. But we sort of that key word operationalizing remains something that folks have experienced consistently as a challenge. And then how should governance models be designed to sustain and scale integration? I was kind of spoke to this already around not being so dependent on one coach, not being so dependent on one leader. If the leader transitions, how are we really strengthening our governance bodies so that they're able to sustain without some of those transitions, or sustain without such a dependency on a singular coach or consultant? So that challenge and that question remains a really important and good one, and maybe part of the next phase of this broader work is how can we build an ecosystem to the degree where its robustness and foundations are so strong that they are able to perpetuate and continue through some of those transitions. I don't know if that's the last slide. Maybe there's a couple more. Yes. So kind of spoke to this already, so I'll skip that one. How do counties define and is this, oh, can we go one more forward? Okay. Well, I feel like I just spoke for a long time. I hope I didn't go over time, but those were some of the major themes, some of the major questions, and hopefully, certainly our intent as a T squared leadership group will be to really metabolize this information and think about how we're able to integrate that into our strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Stefan. Hi, y'all. I'm Ann Duffy with the EdFirst team, and the work that Stefan, Breaking Barriers, and San Bernardino has done has been really great to document the work that the demo counties have been doing and begin to set us up for that sustainability conversation. We will be sending summary slides for each of the demo counties with the follow-up email that you'll receive after this call, so you can see what's happening in each of the counties as well as the overall themes. But now we want to turn our attention to the work that's happening and get a little bit deeper into building a universal service array. So as you remember, the work of T squared is aligned to the 4 essential implementation steps from the ecosystem paper. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're on step 3 for today's conversation, and then we'll have another breakout towards the end of our call to focus on chapter 4. The previous two chapters established how to vision, govern, communicate, and set shared goals across systems. And chapter 3 turns to what those systems deliver and how they can align their respective service arrays into one cohesive continuum that maximizes utilization of available resources and makes them accessible, picking up on some of the themes that you just heard from the demo county's experience. So the organizing logic for this chapter, chapter 3, really mirrors both MTSS and public health models. Tier 1 is around universal wellness and prevention. Tier 2 around targeted early intervention supports. Tier 3 around intensive, individualized, multi-agency services. And by using this tiered structure, it allows counties to more specifically identify gaps, redundancies, clarify referral pathways, and identify where there is shared accountability across systems. So in November, which seems like a very long time ago, we started talking about the key concepts and tools that were needed to build this clear and accessible array of services across agencies, working together to serve youth families and the workforce that's needed to ensure that your universal service array operates effectively and efficiently. So you remember back, Mike Lombardo laid out 5 key concepts, and then we heard a great set of examples from Lara Kane talking about the integrated leadership team from Orange County, which is one key component of the array. So Mike laid out 5 key concepts, and here's a quick reminder. 1 is that ILTs and EACs are the system's connective tissue, keeping things working and serving as the really muscle behind the work. The second is that a successful universal array depends on a workforce across multiple systems. The third is that there are some key implementation levers, having a governance, sharing tools, and common data practices really serve as those implementation levers that drive and support the change. And all of those are grounded in an MOU that really operationalizes the work of the ILT and the EAC. We've talked a lot about the MOUs and had good examples in previous work, all of which can be found in the documents in the live binder. The last is conditions for implementation include the equity, those shared protocols, and continuous improvement. Every team has their own set of KPIs, key performance indicators, and in order to keep the system growing and moving and adapting to emerging needs, there has to be feedback loops. So that is the universal array. And today we set up 3 breakout groups so you can go a bit deeper into exploring some of the elements that support building a universal array and moving towards operationalizing these concepts. So we are going to let you talk to each other again. This is your time to talk about chapter 3. We're going to go into breakouts for about 30 minutes and then come back around chapter 3, and then we'll have another set of breakouts to talk about the chapter 4 and provide feedback. So for these topical breakouts, it's a choose your own adventure. We ask you to select one breakout room that most closely aligns with your county's current challenge or one you are most curious about. Use this time to further your own learning and needs. So each breakout will have a content lead, somebody who will offer sort of their experience, and then we'll have a chance for everybody in the room to discuss. So we will come back as a whole group at 10:15. So when we come back together, each of the leads will actually have a chance to just reflect on the discussion, one thing they're taking away. So we do ask that once we open up the breakout rooms, go to where you'd like to go. But if a breakout is getting to be too big, think about moving to your second choice, just so you can have a fully engaging experience and be able to share and learn from each other. So Room 1 is going to be about the universal array mapping, which is clarifying the architecture of the ecosystem and each system's role. So go there if you want to talk about the architecture and system roles. We'll have in there Elizabeth from Breaking Barriers and Armando from Imperial County. The second breakout room is around cross-agency referral pathways. So thinking about how youth and families move through the system, really digging into and highlighting sort of how do you coordinate and what expectations do you set. So that will be Laura Hogan from California Accountable Communities for Health Initiative program team. And then for those that want to think about readiness, like what's it going to take to get ready for this work, this is going to help you think about what the readiness looks like for governance, MOUs, data flow. There's a lot of work to do to just be ready. And in that room will be Peter from Humboldt and myself. So those are the 3 breakout rooms. Choose your own adventure, but make space if one gets too full. We'll be back here together at 10:15. Before I open the breakout rooms, are there any questions? Awesome. All right, Janine, please open the breakout rooms. And if anybody has trouble finding your way to a breakout room, just come off mute and Janine will help you get there. Thanks so much, everybody. See you back here at 10:15.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to go into a breakout room.
Same here.
Me as well.
I think I can help y'all out. Which room you want to go to?
3 for me.
All right. Give me 1 sec. Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Thanks everybody for taking the time to think deeply about the work that you're doing and the topics around the Universal Service Array in Chapter 3. We gave you a few extra minutes so that we could get a little bit deeper into the work. And so we are not going to do a share out by each group, but hope that you take a minute to reflect on your key learnings that you're taking away from Chapter 3. Because now we're going to turn our attention to Chapter 4. And Brinny, I've just started sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, everyone. We sent you Chapter 4 in advance about a week ago if you had time to review it. What we're going to do today is we've invited Jason Willis to do a quick overview of the concepts in Chapter 4, and then we're going to go into feedback groups like we did in November around Chapter 3 and give you all a chance to offer feedback sort of individually and then have a discussion. We are going to dive into the concepts more deeply in the next 2 CLWG meetings in February and March. So this is really about you reacting to and responding to the chapter as it's written, because we're trying to get these chapters finalized so we can get them back to you and spread them more widely in the state and elsewhere. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who's just going to give us kind of an outline of the key concepts of the chapter, and then we'll move into breakout groups. So Jason, I believe you are up.
Great, thanks. Brittany and Ann, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. So just to give you all a couple of minutes of overview on chapter 4, just appreciations to Brittany and Ann for helping out with some of the logistics, and to Elizabeth, Mike, and Richard for kind of guidance on this, particularly Richard and some others in terms of building the chapter. So let's dive in. Go to the next slide. And then, yep, great. So one of the things that I think is really important as you're either as you've read it or will be reading it, is to think about a couple of kind of patterns that we've seen, especially when we think about sustainability, which is, typically you'll have a pilot of something small, an intervention, a program, et cetera, that is typically underwritten by one-time funding. And then, even as that, program or initiative uh, intervention becomes successful, ultimately the funding runs out, and so the capacity for that dissipates, which has this very curious and sometimes backwards relationship to some of the things that we fund ongoing. We see this in school systems, behavioral health, criminal justice all the time. I think this is kind of piled on through just the volume of initiatives that we've had. By my most recent count, there have been 70 plus new programs in the last 5 California budgets across education, behavioral health, child welfare, and juvenile justice. I mean, these are all tremendous contributions to what we need to see in our ecosystem to support children, youth most directly, but certainly those professionals that are building and executing those systems. But by any measure, and certainly anecdote, it's just too much. It's too much for any single individual or system to take on. And our professionals are feeling significantly overwhelmed. And so the result that we get from the combination of these two patterns is really a perceived scarcity, because those entities are not necessarily talking to one another. There's some nudging in that direction that have come about from state legislation, which is a nod to the state, right? They're doing the right thing, but so much so, not enough so that the kind of scarcity perception remains, and so you get an underutilization of funds. We see a lot of entities that end up not being able to spend through all the money that's been allocated to them. And, a driver then becomes very much cost control over the service that you're trying to provide. And, as you can see on the right, some of the kind of observable behaviors, several of which that I've mentioned already. But I think most notably, that scarcity mindset leads to an even bigger problem. It's a economic theory, what they call the wrong pocket problem, which basically means that if you're sitting around a table and trying to discuss who's going to take on what cost associated with a program or a system or what have you, everyone's pointing in another direction. And that is, probably at its apex, the one of the most unhealthy behaviors when you're trying to design a system that is working and should be working in conjunction with one another. So just to kind of set up a little bit about the challenge, and where we think this chapter really kind of contributes to both unpacking that problem and also driving towards some really practical solutions. Go on to the next slide. So in this chapter, we propose both a definition and then 4 practices. So the definition that we propose is the ability to maintain a group for sustainability, the ability to maintain a group of social and developmental supports in a system over time that evolves towards improvement, adapts to future settings, and is directly responsive to those it serves. So in its ideal state, we would have, whole system review of these things. But I think that given the proximity and challenge at times of new initiatives that we're building relative to the ongoing systems and structures, thinking about the application of this definition might most aptly be provided to a lot of the new things that we're trying to build into the system that potentially and hopefully grows into other larger components of the way the system can improve itself. And so in that way, we kind of lay out 4 practices the integrated financing, in some ways being, some of the kind of heart and soul of the chapter, but recognizing that the kind of quality improvement, data ethics, and the accountability components really are the engine that drives the ability for integrated funding to occur. In its current state, the way that both legal and regulatory structures are set up for financing would suggest that without those other practices of quality improvement, data ethics, and accountability, you will never get to integrated financing. And I can go into that detail, but it's not included in the chapter, and something that kind of underlies the chapter structure. Go on to the next slide. So we propose three guiding principles for this practice of sustainability. The first is to think about public resource leverage as a strategy, and that is to say that you're treating all the funds as one portfolio to align, not isolated pots that you are defending, right? And that is a really important mindset shift. And the way that you can think about the kind of key term here, which is leverage, is thinking about using your kind of collective wisdom and approach to create new revenue, repurpose existing revenue based on a review of what's working well or not, or potentially maximizing underutilized sources. Medicare is a good example. Housing subsidies, food subsidies, those kinds of things are all good examples of that at the federal level. The second principle says that a public dollar is everyone's dollar. What this really advances is this notion that we're all stewards entrusted to optimize the public investment within and across institutions. And key emphasis here on across institutions, right? I as a former CFO in a public school district, could feel like I'm optimizing the funds that are happening inside of that organization, but I've forgotten the opportunity that might exist to partner with behavioral health or work with juvenile justice to combine and braid our funding sources in a way that creates even better benefit for children and youth. And so the mindset around this is critically important, and a way that could offer an ability for others to come to the table under that mandate. And as I said before, the quality improvement, data ethics, and accountability components are really the fuel to this engine, and really thinking about it as an engine, right? So there's loops, continuous loops that are happening at different levels of the system, all with different purposes, but they're all feeding into this broader intention of wanting to create the best benefit for children and youth, that manifests itself through the ongoing integrated investments of monetary dollars. So let's get into talking a little bit about the components themselves. Just a couple minutes to go here, and I'll move through these quickly. So the first practice around integrated financing I had raised before. You can see the 6 implementation steps on the right, but I think that the biggest thing that we really want to lift up here is under process, right? We want to get away from the siloed budgeting processes to joint planning opportunities. And these are all predictable. Budget planning cycles are very predictable. And so it creates a way to engineer a different form of engagement and planning with practitioners. So on to practice 2, go to the next slide, is really focused on continuous quality improvement. So you can see the kind of meeting rhythm on the right-hand side is really a kind of nested and embedded process and procedure. And I think the most notable here in terms of non-negotiable features is the first one out of the gate. You got to start with lived experience. So what is it like to walk through one door? What is it like to walk through several doors? And starting to think about how do you improve the processes that you're working on, systems, programs, et cetera. Next slide. Practice 3 kind of focuses on data ethics and information sharing. I love the kind of component here about this chapter that really says data is not neutral, right? In an ecosystem of care, data is a form of power and a relationship. So we really have to treat it that way. And, think about when you are coming together to talk about the last practice that I just touched on. You got to think about that walking into the room. And so this chapter really kind of lays out opportunities and steps and examples of how you can position both yourself and your colleagues and others to really think about data from the perspective of using it in an ethical way and a way that kind of advances towards the goals that you have. Next slide. And practice 4 really kind of points to this notion of reciprocal accountability. The terminology here I know is parallel to kind of shared accountability and other things like that. I particularly like this description of reciprocal accountability and its definition in the literature, and in particular because it really pushes on the ability of two entities to be working together. So the quote that I love is um, from a network leader in Chicago, where he states that for every increment of improvement that I demand of you, right? When you think about this in nested systems, county to local, local to neighborhood, et cetera, for every increment of improvement that I demand of you, I am responsible for providing you with the support to make that improvement possible, right? I think that really kind of captures it well in terms of thinking about this notion of how do you build reciprocal accountability. And you can pair that both in a peer relationship, if you're thinking about this at the local level or the county level, but also in that nested situation as well. And this is something that I think right now our incentives push us away from, push us back into our organizations, push us back into the kind of streams of work that we have. And so this is really hoping to kind of tie together both the continuous improvement practice with the data ethics practice in a way that allows us to kind of keep our eye on what kind of ongoing formative relationship we want to have. Okay, and I think that this will be our last slide. Yeah. So just a couple of questions for the review that you'll get into, in terms of thinking about barriers that exist around treating public funds as, quote, one portfolio under integrated financing. On the point of the CQI, how can you ensure youth and family voices are in there to shape decisions on the ethical data? What would community-defined data governance look like? How would it differ from today? And then on accountability, how do we balance transparency with psychological safety for teams? You can feel free to take any and all of these. I know the prompts for today are pretty broad, Brittany and Ann, but with that, I'll turn it back over to y'all.
Thank you so much, Jason. We are going to have some fun in February and March digging more into all of these 4 practices. So for the rest of today, we want to again, you'll be self-selecting into feedback groups. We've given you a section to choose from out of chapter 4. Karen has also put the link to the chapter 4 draft that we sent to you all in the chat. So you all should have that. If you don't, please tell one of us or put it in the chat and we'll get it to you. The idea is that we're not looking at this point for grammatical corrections or wordsmithing. We're really looking about whether this is going to work for you all. And if you want to use some of these questions that Jason has posed, that's awesome as well. But the idea is like, when you read this, is this from wherever your position is, or if you think about system leaders or leaders up and down who are going to be implementing this this guide to help build an ecosystem of care, is it going to be useful, essentially? So next slide. And we've thought that our assumption was that a couple of these topics are going to be more popular than others. So we created 2 groups, but basically these are going to be your options when Jameen pulls up the groups, and you can see the page numbers. Each one of these discussion feedback groups will also have a facilitator. Jason's going to support us with that, along with Anne, Renita, and myself. So we'll give you the page numbers. You'll have time to review that section of the paper. We have a Google Doc we will share with you, if we can put that in the chat now too. A Google Doc where we'll ask you to think on your own, answer some of those questions, and then come back for a discussion. Any questions about the process? All right, we will come back at 10 minutes to 11 to regroup and close out. But thank you all. And Jameen, you can go ahead and open up the groups now.
I'm having a difficult time.
I can help you. Which room would you like to go to?
Number one.
Yeah, I never saw the list.
Same here.
And you said you number one too?
No, I never saw the list.
Oh, so it is integrated financing, A or B, continuous quality improvement, community defined information sharing, A or B.
I'll take
And
CQI 3, I think it was.
All right, there you go. Sorry, which one?
All right, well, that was fast.
Very.
I told, and I only had 2 people in my group, but if you all what's happening? Oh, we're getting slides back. If you all want to continue to offer feedback in that Google Doc or in the chapter itself, the version we sent you, please feel free to do that over the next couple of days. We are trying to get this turned around, but certainly want to have your feedback. So let's say I will send some follow-up, but let's say by the end of this week at the very latest, if you could offer your thoughts on this, that would be great. It is chapter 4. I'm just going to answer a question I was asked before we got brought back to the group, the whole group. If you are unclear about anything, we want to know that. If you feel like some of the language is not clear, even if it might have been explained in the first 3 chapters, just note it here so we can make sure it's explained somewhere else or explained in this chapter. We want this to be as clear as possible and for the concepts to be as clear as possible since we are speaking to a cross-agency group, we hope. So please note those. Any other questions or comments just for the good of the review that came up in other groups, Anne or Renita or Jason, that we might need to answer for everyone?
Nope, just time, Brittany. We didn't get all the input, so I am encouraging people to put it in the Google Doc.
Yeah. Time is not our friend on this call. All right. Let's go to the next slide, Anne. Thank you everyone for today and for all your engagement. Really appreciate it. It would help us a lot if you could just put into the, as this asks you, put into the chat a new insight or motivation or action step or some thought about the content that we did cover today. We did try the demo county report out that Marisa and Stefan did at the beginning is new, so would love to hear your thoughts about that. If you could just put that in the chat, we'd really appreciate that. There is an exit survey that San Bernardino asked us to fill out just to make sure that we are capturing everyone who was here and any thoughts there. So you'll get that. There's going to be a link in the chat, and I'll also send it out after the call today.
The last thing, Brittany, I just wanted to add is we are going to be doing webinars on all the chapters. The first one's going to be in February. And we'll send a blast on those webinars, but the first will be the introduction in chapter 1, March will be chapter 2, April will be chapter 3, and May will be chapter 4. So look for that, and you can spread the word and join.
Okay, next slide, Anne. As we mentioned at the top of the call, we have a postcard that you are welcome to access if you're attending conferences or meetings or anything where you feel like it would be important to spread the word. So please reach out to the San Bernardino team if you would like access to that postcard. It's a PDF that you can have printed. Love the comments. Be patient and follow your North Star. Small, sweet steps. Also in April, we, as was mentioned at the top of the call, we've been working with the youth, I cannot remember the name for the life of me, dang it. It's a youth experiential learning labs program. We're going to be working with them to really develop a simulation very much customized for our T squared work. So we have a 2-day meeting that should be have been on your schedule since last August when we sent it out. But we also want all of you to think about who you would bring. The simulation is especially effective for cross-sector groups. So this is an opportunity for you to bring folks that are in a lot of your different sectors from your counties or from across your work. We will have more information for you about this, but it's led by youth. It's really exciting. We've had one kind of preliminary exploratory call with them, and we think this is going to be really, really fun. Renita's put the link in the chat. You can have a look at the organization, the program, but we'll be customizing it for T squared. So additional link in the chat is going to be a registration form for April, since it's a 2-day meeting. And since we're asking you to really think carefully about inviting cross-sector folks, we just need an idea of how many people are coming so we can make sure we have the space. There's also information about travel and hotels and things like that. So that link will
Brittany, I'm wondering if someone from the San Bernardino team can drop in that registration link, because the one I have is not the correct. So if someone from San Bernardino can drop in that registration link, that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. All right, any further comments for the good of the order? Happy to still read any comments you want to put in the chat about today's meeting, anything you want follow up on. Oh, thank you. Last thing, does someone from San Bernardino want to talk about this slide?
I'll talk about it. So our call for presenters, so we do the wellness conference every year in July. This year it will be at the end of July, so July 22nd through the 24th at the Disneyland Hotel. So our call for presenters actually closes this Friday. So if you know anybody who is a great presenter and who wants to come and speak at the conference, we would love to have you. Just click that scan that QR code and then fill out the little application, and then we'll get back to you. So hope to see you all there. It's fun. I'll be there with my ears.
Thank you, Karen. All right, everyone, really appreciate you. We have 5 more meetings, one of which is this in person in San Bernardino. So looking forward to see you all in person in April, and then February virtually again. All right, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you all very much, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.
Everybody. Bye.
Drop the registration.
Bye. Thank you.
The registration form.
Yes, I'll